Thank you. Good evening or good afternoon or even good morning, wherever you are tuning in this evening to this webinar. I have the pleasure here of introducing Gary Harvey, the new CEO of Rincon Resources, who'll be giving a bit of an overview of the company and its outlook and strategy going forward from here. I'm looking very blurry, I'm afraid. That's just the lighting we have. At the end of this webinar, there will be time for some Q&A, and I look forward to discussing some of those questions and points with Gary or with the other directors who may be on the call as well. So at this stage, I'll hand it over to you, Gary. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Peter, for the introduction. And welcome, investors, to this forum. Look, I'll just start with really where my career's come from and what's brought me to Rincon. So my career thus far has been about 27 years in the mining exploration industry. The majority of my career has essentially been exploration and development of gold projects throughout the Yilgarn of Western Australia. I've worked on several projects across various regions, from grassroots exploration through mine and brownfields development and exploration extensions. So I actually started my career around Laverton. And as you all know now, I explored the northern belts of Laverton up around Duketon, and that is all Regis Resources territory at the moment. And they've obviously done very well out of that package of ground. Following that, I spent several years grassroots level with Forestania Gold, and that took me from various regions through what is now Thunderbox, through down to Lake Johnson, where I worked on Emily Ann and Maggie Hayes nickel deposits, and then moved on to the Bounty Gold Mine. The last 10 years, the last 16 years, I've been Barra Resources, publicly listed company. The last 10 of those years, I've been the exploration manager, solely managing the execution and strategic output on those on their gold strategy, and not only that, having worked on the PFS for the Mount Thirsty cobalt nickel deposits. So I've got a broad level of experience, which I bring to Rincon, and also when I was with Barra, I spent many of those last 10 years working at board level directly with the board. So I've got good corporate experience behind me as well, and I bring all that to Rincon Resources. I guess in terms of Rincon and their assets, I think one of the things that drew me to Rincon was that they have three very good assets with good acreage in three very good regions, being Laverton, Telfer in the Paterson province, and also in the West Arunta region with our Kubirakara project. Now, all three of those are very good assets and very good locations. Telfer area, Paterson province, and Laverton are all tier 1 asset locations. And if you know your homework and you've done your homework and you know the regions, you'll know that there's many tier 1 deposits in those areas, and we're right there in the mix of all those assets. So we've got excellent potential in all those projects, particularly South Telfer and Laverton, to really make early progress on our exploration and hopefully a short timeline to discovery. I think there's nothing better than having a project. I'm speaking of South Telfer at the moment, which is no less than 40-50 k's from Telfer, which has produced 32 million ounces of gold and 1 million tonnes of copper. There's no better region to be in when you're that close to a mine that's got such a rich history and still going. But what that also gives us is potentially a very short timeline to discovery, and also the ability to potentially short circuit the production timeline with close access to existing mills and infrastructure. So I think that's one of the other key reasons that I was pretty excited about coming on board at Rincon. I guess finally, the third project we have, Kubirakara. Now look, this is an area that we have. It's in the West Arunta. For me, it's a new frontier, but I'm pretty excited by the opportunity that we're going looking for IOCG and gold. As you know, these IOCG deposits have huge potential for copper. If you look at the BHP's Olympic Dam, well, don't have to say much more. It's one of the highest producing copper deposits in Australia, and certainly one of the cornerstones of BHP's asset portfolio. So the West Arunta, it's new, it's grassroots, it's early days, but we're excited because we've got big players moving in around us in IGO and also Rio Tinto, who are actively seeking to acquire ground to their own, doing farm-ins and the like. So, we're at an early stage at Kubirakara, but we're looking forward to sinking our teeth into that as much as we are at South Telfer and at Laverton. I think the value proposition for Rincon, there's a couple there. So one, we've got good exposure to gold, good exposure to copper in all of our assets. Both those commodities are very much in demand at the moment. Copper being driven by the world global electrification disruption at the moment. We're all seeing that copper is starting to move on an upward trajectory, and it's likely to stay that way for many years to come, in my view. As I just stated previously, we've got potentially a very short timeline to discovery, particularly at Laverton and South Telfer. And again, we have an early opportunity potentially to monetize anything that we do discover, given the proximal location of our deposits, or our projects to existing projects and existing milling facilities. We're well funded. We've got funding for the next 2 years. We've got drill-ready targets. We're already drilling at Laverton. We're due to drill at South Telfer in a couple of months. We've just signed up a drilling contractor, and that'll follow on the back of an existing program they're doing for one of our competitors in the Paterson province. So once that's finished, they'll move on down to us. It'll alleviate a lot of mobilisation costs being so close. And so we have 5,000 metres of RC drilling planned for our South Telfer project. So we're looking for some quick wins on the board there, given that we're drilling around an existing known zone of mineralisation that was previously drilled by Newcrest Mining. So we have drill-ready targets. We've got Kubirakara in an exciting new province, which is Frontier. And finally, I think what we have is a precursor to success. We have an existing experienced exploration team, and we've also got a young, vibrant and enthusiastic board, and we've got access to plenty of funding if required. So look, all these things I see as a value proposition for Rincon, and most likely you do too. So that's why you're shareholders. And look, lastly, I think I just, I'm due to go up to the field in 3 or 4 days' time. I'll be doing a 6-day field trip to Telfer and South Telfer and Laverton. One thing I like to do wherever I go is to get my feet dirty and my feet on the ground, look at the rocks, make sure that I know what we're exploring, become intimate with those projects, and to make sure that with that knowledge that I see and potentially information that we gather from the existing programs, that we move forward and we do justice with these projects and we explore them diligently, and we don't leave too many stones unturned. So I'm looking forward to at least the next 6 months and going forward. We'll have plenty of news flow on the back of drilling that's occurring at Laverton at the moment, and the completion of some geophysical programs that we're completing at South Telfer, and then also the commencement of drilling at South Telfer. So watch this space. Peter?
Yeah, Gary, the drilling that's coming up, or the drilling underway at Laverton, what sort of historical evidence do you have already? What's the mineralogy like, and what's your expectation? I mean, what's the thesis behind, or the theory behind this program, and what you'd love to be able to find out about it and report once it's completed?
Yeah, look, so the Laverton project is quite unique. We were quite lucky to get a decent size acreage in amongst, like I said, several large deposits, including, around Wallaby and Granny Smith, which are very decent size projects. There's been minimal work actually done on the leases that we have. And I'm not sure why there's only been a minimum. There has been evidence from existing drilling. I can't quite call off the top of my head what the grades were, but I know I've seen the data and the maps, and there's several holes with anomalous mineralisation, which hasn't really been followed up, and most of that data or the information from historical drilling has been sort of verified to be, anomalous in an anomalous zone. It matches up with recent geochemical work that the crew's been able to complete earlier this year, where we identified several trends, gold and arsenic associated trends, and they're the targets that we're drilling at the moment. So what I hope to achieve out of this particular program, given it's our first one, and it's air core, so I guess you could kind of say it's a cheap and nasty test to confirm, what's been drilled previously, and trying to extend and identify a zone of gold mineralisation in and amongst the shallow regolith cover. So, provided we can do that, and if we get some results to prove that there's a plume of oxide mineralisation, then that helps us develop targets that we could potentially go in and follow up with deeper RC drilling to find some source. It's the source to this anomalism, and we'll
so
take that step by step.
What is the sort of the source rock there that you think may have produced some of the geochem anomalies at surface? What are we looking for there in terms of host rock, and how deep will the air core go?
Well, look, I talk about shallow oxide mineralisation, but it's at the moment we've been drilling holes down to 100 and 120 metres in some areas, so it's quite deep. But
yeah,
the basement rock, from what I'm aware of, is mainly basalts, so it's pretty common. But there's a unit of banded iron formation which travels down the eastern side of our package. Now, directly along strike from that is a gold deposit. And we're hoping that this banded iron formation, given the level of cover that we're experiencing now with the drilling, that has been poorly tested. It does mean we would have to drill probably a bit deeper than we'd like at this stage to find any bedrock source, but we're hopeful that the air core drilling that we're doing actually gives us enough confidence and belief to go in and do some deeper RC drilling. So, these banded iron formations are quite crucial. They're well known to host gold mineralisation and obviously deposits that can be quite rich, and very rewarding if you come across a deposit. So that's what we're looking for.
And then moving on to South Telfer and some of the exploration that I think you said Newmont has done there in the past. What sort of exploration results have they brought up? And obviously back in the days when gold was $300 an ounce and not as attractive as it is now, what sort of historical data do we have to look at? And once again, what's your gut feeling about the kind of program we're running there and what we're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so look, sorry, I've just lost my screen. There we go. Look, at South Telfer, again, there's been very broad zones of gold and copper mineralisation that we've extracted from open file information. There've been grades up to 2 or 3 grams over, widths almost up to 40 metres, as far as I'm aware. And of course, that's also with copper. There's been copper of anywhere from 0.5% to 1%. So we'll be following up and drilling around those results. So that's the Hastings prospect at the moment, which is also where we're doing ground IP. So that's a form of geophysics. We've also done some recent VTEM, and we're both hoping that both those surveys actually identify some additional targets in the package, or at least highlight areas that haven't been drilled, which we can test. So when we're up there, we're doing our 5,000 metre program. Most of that will be around Hastings and centred on existing mineralisation. But we're hoping we can identify some new targets that we can quickly shift to if required. Ideally, I'd like to see some drill me now targets pop out of that geophysics, and that'll be very exciting. So I've got no problem extending 5,000 metres to 6, 7, 8,000 metres if required, provided those new targets do have that drill me now type signature. So yeah,
I'll just remind our audience there that we're 10 k's southeast of Telfer, 32 million ounces gold and 1 million tonnes copper. 10 k's. I mean, I'll do that when I run around the block. It's not very far away.
No, it's not. And you have to remember that although this was an ex-Newcrest project, like you're saying, commodity prices are the big driver of the day. And Newcrest being the size they are, they've got a very hungry mill. It's a very big mill, and certainly deposits don't have that quick indication, or a very early indication in those days when the prices might have been marginal. Then they would have just said, no, well, we've got better things to look at. We'll go, so it was all based on priorities. And I guess Hastings is just one of those areas that potentially we're hoping that it was just one of those deposits that didn't fit Newcrest's criteria, which is big deposits.
Yeah.
And at today's prices, particularly copper and gold going through the roof, what was sub-economic potentially back then could easily be economic now. So that's what we're banking on, and that's what will give us a short timeline to discovery if that's the case. So let's hope gold and copper just keep going.
well, I don't know how far copper can keep going. Over $10,000 a tonne today, and gold looks like it's breaking upwards through its recent downtrend, trading about 1840, 1850 this evening. So that trend is with us, and you're a long trend from that Telfer discovery. Is that currently a big open pit? Do they explore around the pit when you're that big, or they just dig out that pit and that's it?
Certainly, when you've got a 32 million ounce deposit, I think there's a couple of pits there, mainly an open pit, but I think they've been doing underground as well. I'm not fully familiar with the mining practices there at the moment, but I suggest it's probably been both. But yeah, when you find a massive deposit like that, it's quite easy just to focus on the mining, the gold, and then you tend to move your exploration a bit further afar from what you know. There would have been some near mine stuff, but they would have been busy hopping off trying to find other deposits elsewhere. I mean, a lot of the ground that Newcrest held is now held by competitors such as Antipa and Greatland, where new deposits are being found. So we're hoping our project is no different. There's nothing to say that there's not a big deposit sitting on our ground.
And Gary, Greatland had tremendous success there in the last 2 years, starting from probably similar situation to where we were in just picking up an old project in a similar area and laying down some good hard geological exploration. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I think we've got a great opportunity to do the same. And whilst we're not 60k, I mean, we're not 60k to the east of Telfer. We're immediately along strike. So exactly the same geology, same trend with the west end trend directly along strike. So all you need is one of these little intrusions to show itself, which is basically the driver of the mineralisation at Telfer. If we stumble across one of those, then who knows what might happen. But there's no reason why we can't replicate the success of Antipa and Greatland. So I'd love to have more ground. We're always keeping an eye on the availability of ground as it comes past, and we'll try to add to our project area if we can. The more ground you have in hot areas, the better. Gives you more opportunity. So so we're pretty confident we're at least onto something. Having Hasties, which has had a reasonable amount of drilling, and already got existing economical intersections as far as I'm concerned. So we're halfway there.
And that's right. And given the location and that data, what sort of, will you go air core again, or will you spend a bit more money and go RC or maybe a deeper diamond?
Oh, look, I think, if we're going to get any success in the RC, then you're probably going to go straight back with more RC and indeed diamond. Diamond's a ripper for gaining structural information and indeed seeing what the real rock type is without it being all broken up with RC. So you definitely want to get some diamond drilling in there. New targets, depending on where they are. If they're undercover, then you might go with an air core program early on, and then search for any sort of indication that there's something else to be found. Then you might go in with your RC following that up. So look, it could be one, it could be a combination of three. It depends on where the targets are, what it is you're looking for, shallow, deeper. So yeah, all three, all of above.
It's going to be a big lead up to that program, and there'll be a fair bit of focus and expectation. So we'll look forward to seeing that as it comes together. Moving on to Kubirakara, it's potential juicy IOCG targeting in an area once again which has had a bit of work done to it. Have you had much of a chance to get across the potential there and perhaps the geology and where we're drilling historically by Ashburton Minerals and what they'd come up with?
Yeah, look, I have to admit, Kubirakara I haven't really had a great look at in detail. I haven't seen the technical detail behind that yet. I actually kept catching up with the exploration team when I start on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'll be able to answer more about that after that. But look, from what I know, we're looking at a collision zone between two continental plates, an old collision zone. So these zones tend to throw up a lot of circulating fluids and a lot of metals, and that's what IOCGs are all about. You get strong fluids, lots of fluids, strong alteration. From what I know, having spoken to Zephron Reeves, our other director, one of the founders of Rincon, from his experience being out there, he just says couldn't really make sense of it at the moment. There was just so much going on. And so what I'm really looking forward to doing is actually going out there at some point in time and seeing the rocks for myself. At this point in time, we're currently doing some geophysical work. where we're reprocessing old geophysical data. We've done some remote sensing mapping, and following that and the understanding of that is when I'll go out to the field and have a look really at what we've got. But like I said, I think if you got two major players in Rio Tinto and IGO hovering around there trying to acquire as much ground as possible, that kind of tells you that the area's got good potential. So we're right in the middle of all that, and I think Kubirakara is at the great unknown, but it could be the great big one as well. Like I said, IOCGs are massive.
Yeah, that's right. There's some good hits there, and I'm able to see on my screen here 32 metres at 0.5% copper, 64 metres 0.4%, 46 metres 0.4%, 44 metres 0.3%. Given the copper price at the moment, and Rio and BHP will, their geos will obviously be going back through the data to see where good projects had been given up in the past and be having another look. This is well, I think prices are exceeding both in iron ore and copper, where we were in that resources boom back in mid 2000s. So there's going to be a hot focus as soon as everybody starts selling out their cryptocurrencies. They'll probably come back to quality exploration companies. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And look, the data that we have from Kubirakara is open file data. It's the same data that Rio Tinto have been looking at. So, if we thought it was good, I'm sure they would think it's good. But we've got our hands on that at Bakali. So, if Rio don't come looking, we'll go and have a chat to them. But we want to make sure that we identify some good targets and make sure that we understand what we've got before we do anything else with it. And but I think it's another great project and a ripping opportunity down the track for us. So in the timeline of things, our immediate focus obviously will be South Telfer and Laverton, simply because of access at the moment and infrastructure. But Kubirakara being quite remote, logistics are obviously quite difficult. That'll be a work in progress for us, but no less important. Well, Gary, it's a pretty nice time to slide into the company at this role that you have done when the boys have put such a good group of assets together. So I'm sure it'd be like jumping in the Ferrari and ready to take off, and somebody else has tuned it all up for you. So we'll be excited to see how this progresses. And I might just see if Jeff, you'd like to sign off here with a bit of your view of bringing Gary on and where Rincon's headed over the next few months.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks, Gary. Look, very excited to have Gary on board. Gary and I work together, so I'm very confident in Gary's capabilities. Obviously, drilling at Laverton, as Gary mentioned, we've actually started to send some of those samples off. They'll be going to the East Coast because the turnaround times there are more effective. And we expect to be able to announce, not in the too distant future, that we will have locked in that driller who's currently working up there, ideally targeting a June commencement at South Telfer. And as Gary and Peter have both mentioned in this call, that'll be a pretty exciting time for us to start putting some RC holes into Hastings and follow up on what are some quite exceptional gold and copper results. So the next couple of months, we're going to have 2 field programs running in parallel. A lot of things happening, a lot of news flow, and looking forward to it. It's going to be a very exciting time for the business. Thank you.
Terrific. All right. Well, now the rubber starts to hit the road, and we'll look forward to some ongoing news flow from these drilling programs. Gary, thanks very much for coming along this evening. Jeff, thanks to you as well. This will be recorded so we can have it available for anybody. I can provide the link to anyone who'd like to review this or send it forward. If there are any further questions from anybody, please send them through to me, peter@nwrcommunications.com.au, and I'll see that Gary gets onto them as well. So thanks for attending wherever you are, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you, everyone.